Hey everyone, I'm Jack with the Cardboard Herald, and it has been way too long since we visited this topic. Yes, our top 10 favorite cooperative games, because it's one of my favorite genres of games, and there's been a ton of innovation in this genre since we last visited this topic nearly 4 years ago. I can't believe how time flies. So let's go ahead and get into our top 10 favorite cooperative games for the Cardboard Herald. Number 10 is Freelancers, the latest Crossroads game by Plaid Hat Games, though they have one by Jerry Hawthorne on the horizon, but this is the most recent one that's available, and I think it is a complete banger. It's an evolution forward from the original Crossroads games, starting with Dead of Winter, which was a semi-cooperative hidden traitor game, whereas this one is fully cooperative. It's a story-based, very irreverent game with a completely original art style, aesthetic, and core humor that's just a tweak off from what you're familiar with Plaid Hat, but I think it fits really well within their sensibilities and what they're trying to do with that studio going forward. It's exceptionally easy to pick up and is this great introduction to role-playing while still automating some of the heaviest uplifts that's expected out of someone new to a role-playing type of game. And I think this is perfect for bringing people into some of these concepts that can later be expanded upon with proper role-playing games. But it's a great game in and of itself. It's app-assisted, it's very accessible, it's very fun, it's very funny. Number 9 is the latest game on this list, which is so impressive to me. That is Leviathan Wilds by Moon Crab Games. This is a climbing game, a dungeon climbing game that is in the vein of video games like Shadow of the Colossus, but this one has you and your fellow players climbing up trying to save these titanic leviathans in one specific scenario that you're playing at a time, though it is not a campaign game with linear progression from game to game to game to game. Each one of them is one and done, which I think ultimately is in service of what they're going for, a very tight, interesting, repeatable game that has interesting player powers that are a combination of a couple player cards and a passive power for your character mixed in with a player class, and then throwing the whole dungeon crawl thing on its head by adding in verticality. There aren't enemies to operate other than the environment itself, which is the Titan that you're trying to save, each with its own unique cards. It's very easy to operate. Games take only about 60 minutes, but it is just interesting, crunchy, innovative, strange, and indelibly replayable because of the mixes of characters, classes, and all of the different interesting things that you do with the Titans. There's so many cool, wild, innovative things that can happen with the verticality aspect of this game, and jumping and ledges and falling and stamina. It's great. Number 8 is my favorite real-time game, period, and that is Kitchen Rush. Yes, I love Kitchen Rush, specifically 2nd edition, which I think is a really beautiful packaging of the original Kitchen Rush, which was good in and of itself, but this is streamlined, fantastically presented, progresses through the whole thing as a series of episodes that you can play, ultimately tutorializing all the elements of the game to a fully fledged, rich, and complex real-time kitchen management simulator, which is fantastic. I thought it was going to end up being too complex for my son, who was only 8 when I initially got it, and he immediately grasped onto it. Even the more complex ideas that come with the pressures of adding new things over time, from more demanding customers to having to kick out staff to balancing budgets to making sure that you have enough money for all the workers that you're going to need from round to round. And of course, purchasing the materials, the vegetables, the meats, the needed spices, and managing all of these different mini games in an extremely frantic, tight, and beautifully presented game. I think the tutorialized campaign is great, and I also think the fully fledged final game that you can just incorporate all the elements and then change up a couple of the parameters is also fabulous. It is so fun. It is so crazy. It is so high octane pressure, and I love cooking. My whole family loves cooking, so it fits well thematically for us, and in contrast to a lot of the different games that I typically gravitate to thematically. Number 7 is Marvel Champions. This one has been a favorite for a very long time, and I still really like it. It's a game that plays beautifully in multiplayer, is fantastic solo, and it gets around one of the things that I don't always love about LCGs, which is constructing decks, because you can just have the decks as precons and still feel completely capable, like you're getting a lot of variety, and that you're getting all these different mashups between different heroes that you're playing with together, either if you're multi-handing solo, if you're playing single hero solo, seeing what they can do against different villain mashups, and then also playing with other players. Of course, it feels like you're playing with your action figures, except in cardboard form, and you're getting to live out all of these different mashups that you've either read in comics, seen in movies, cartoons, or you've just envisioned in your head. And there are so many cool ways in which the game design team has incorporated thematic elements of the unique hero powers and supplemented and built upon the structure that is Marvel Champions as a whole. And if you do want the deck building element, there is some very simple, easy, mashable deck building that you can do to create some really interesting ends, which is necessary to be able to take on the more difficult versions of the various villains that are out there now. There's a ton of it. I have a lot of it. I try not to buy all of it because I want to make sure to play and enjoy the things that I have and get a good amount of use out of it before moving on to something else. But if you have a favorite hero, there's a good chance that there's that hero in Marvel Champions. You know, assuming you actually like Marvel. Number 6 is Mysterium Park, which is a condensed version of Mysterium, which itself is one of my favorite cooperative games, and this is just all around better. It's just a better game. It's a smaller package, it's tighter, it has less weirdness in some of the, like push your luck kind of guessing things. It just arrives at the conclusion faster and gets to the core experience, which I really like. And the whole circus aesthetic is cool and pleasant and spooky and weird and kind of invites that kind of off-kilter vibe that I think fits very well with it. Now, I think that the reason why this is so high on my list is because this is one of those cooperative games that I can play with just about anyone and have a really fabulous time, and the things that it draws out of people and the discussions that you have about thinking about other people and how they think about things is so fabulous. Mechanically speaking, I probably like a lot of the games on this list more as far as just rich mechanical experiences, but the experiences that I've had with people as a social game has put this really high on my list as some of my favorite gaming experiences of all time. Number 5 is a game that is taking the critical board game world by storm, and that is Earthborne Rangers. And yeah, it's just really good. The studio has this as their debut. This studio is made up of lots of people who are former Fantasy Flight staffers who bring a lot of experience, a lot of game design knowledge forward, and I think they're taking a lot of the lessons that they've learned from the previous games that they've worked on, including fan favorite Arkham Horror, which really could have gone in this slot here because I do really like Arkham Horror, but Earthborne Rangers is just so good. Instead of Arkham's scenario-based situation, this adopts an open world, procedurally generated card environment that really works better than you could imagine it actually happening. And you build decks that have very subtle changes that are just casually built as part of like a tutorialization at the beginning of the campaign, and then evolves based off of the events that happen as you're playing the game. It's really ambitious, and they completely pull it off. Number 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, I guess all of these by definition at this point are some of my favorite games of all time, but this one, I love it so much, and that is Sail. This tiny little cooperative trick-taking box I am obsessed with. I love the tension involved in every turn in which you're playing a card, hoping that what you're playing is foreshadowing to your cooperative player who can't talk about anything in their hand, what you're really hoping that they're playing. You know, every card you're going, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Trying to edge them into giving out information about their hand, or hopefully telling and communicating information about your own hand without verbalizing any of this information here. There are different player powers that create interesting scenarios for you to have to deal with, and playing through the progressive scenarios, while they aren't necessarily that much different, they provide greater and greater challenges for you to have to employ the skills that you've built up as you've played the game. It is incredibly tense. It takes my favorite anxiety-inducing aspects of trick-taking and flips it on its head, making you hope that you are communicating a lot of great information instead of hoping that you are successfully bluffing your opponents regarding information. And it's all done in this beautiful aesthetic in this tight package. Sail is a one-of-a-kind game. It is so marvelous. Number 3, are we talking about small box games? Because I have to talk about Regicide, which is a game that you can play and is intended to be played with a fully standard deck of cards. And it is just incredible. The way that it imaginatively takes the royals of a standard deck of cards and makes them the opposition that you are leading a revolution against, and you are inflicting damage with the cards that you play, but then receiving damage back based off of whether it's a jack or a queen or a king, and then eventually you adopt those cards that you defeat into your deck as you surmount stronger and stronger challenges. It is something that as soon as someone has played a round, they're immediately hooked, and they just want to see through the matrix and see how they can adopt a strategy to defeat these royals, employing the magics of the different suits that you're utilizing and skirting around the fact that the royals nullify the magic of the suits that they represent. There is an official Regicide deck of cards that you can get from the studio itself, and they are working on a brand new Regicide Legacy, which who knows what bananas things are going to come out of that. I can't wait to get my hands on that. But Regicide itself, if you got a deck of cards lying around, pull up the rules, they're on BGG, and just play the game. It is so good, and every time I've shown it to someone, we inevitably fail the first game, and then they go, all right, we're playing again. And then like 6 games later, we might have won. Number 2 is the Big Daddy, but not the original daddy. It's the little brother that is the big brother. I'm talking about Frosthaven here. Cephalofair's Mammothian box that just is everything that Gloomhaven was, and then ratchets it up to 11. Now, there is a lot of discussion in the Gloomhaven community as to, are the things that Frosthaven brings forward actually making the game better? They're more complex, unique concepts and scenarios. You're no longer, for the most part, just having to kill all enemies. There's a lot of scenarios that have unique rules. There's a ton of town building aspects. There's town defense aspects. It makes the whole Frosthaven phase of the game that happens after the scenario proper a lot longer of a game. And the answer, for my own part, is I've played over 65 games of Frosthaven with my group, and we show no sign of stopping. Now, Gloomhaven's system is wonderful, but I think Frosthaven presents a more nuanced, rich world and progression that feels so different than anything that's come before it in tabletop games, that feels like it rewards you taking this next step into role playing, not just with who your character is, but what you want this community to be, what you want to do with your resources, what you want to craft, what you want to see progress. And we're just having a blast. Now, before we get to number one, I have a couple honorable mentions. Games that didn't hit the list for a variety of reasons, but I think they at least deserve a mention because they are cooperative experiences that I love and think deserve some sort of recognition. So first off, we got Forbidden Desert, which the Matt Leacock influence on cooperative gaming is undeniable and inescapable, and I think that Forbidden Desert is my absolute favorite of the Leacockian games that are out there. And while there are a ton of great ones, I think Forbidden Desert is the one that I continue to go back to again and again and again. And then there's Star Wars Imperial Assault, which, as originally designed, is not a fully cooperative game, but subsequently, since release, an app had been released that allows you to use your materials to play a fully cooperative campaign. I think it is the best Star Wars game that's out there, and I think it's one of the best app-integrated dungeon crawls that you can play. I'm a huge fan of it. The Light and the Mist is so great. It is among my favorite gaming experiences of all time. Post Curious has done some really amazing puzzle tales, as they describe them. It blends a really affecting story with a really incredible puzzle design concept with multi-use cards that just continually showed layers and layers and layers. It's not really a game, it's a puzzle tale, but it is one that I'm going to think fondly of for the rest of my gaming career. Then there's Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. I played through a lot of the original Sleeping Gods. I really enjoyed it. It didn't quite rank the top 10. Now, Distant Skies, I have on my shelf over there. My Frosthaven group is going to get to it sometime when we take a break from Frosthaven. But it purports to address some of the things that I think, if they truly are addressed, would make the Sleeping God system sit higher on my favorite cooperative games of all time list. And then lastly, Tesseract is on here, which I don't own. A buddy owns it. I've played it. I really enjoyed it, but I haven't gone out to buy it myself. But part of that may be that my buddy has it. So I don't know. If I play that more, if I get it to the table more, that one may actually crack this list. It does some interesting spatial things in a three-dimensional arena that works well thematically and mechanically that made a huge impression on me. Okay, and so with that, we get to number one, which is, yeah, it's my favorite game of all time, and that's Spirit Island. I'm still playing so much Spirit Island. There's so much Spirit Island to explore, even in the initial release, but there has been so much subsequent content that has come out over time. It's clockworkian, it's strategic, it's thematic, it is something that can be changed up from game to game to game. It has interesting timing elements, there are surprising things, and there are wonderful synergies that can happen that are unique to each spirit combination as you play with multiple spirits. And it works good as a single spirit solo game, as a purely strategic game, and employing the best aspects and making up for the weaknesses of an individual spirit. But the true magic of that game is when two or more spirits, usually two. 2 and 3 is my favorite player count for Spirit Island, but when they're working in unison and seeing the magic that comes out of just chomping invaders left and right. It is a heavier game, and there is a more introductory Spirit Island Horizons, which is actually a really good set if you are a little bit intimidated by the full-fledged experience. But Spirit Island continues to be a game that I go back to again and again and again, and is absolutely my favorite game of all time, and is my favorite cooperative game of all time. And that's the list. But let me know, what are your favorite cooperative games? Put them in the comments. And if you got beef with any of my lists, put that in there too. I'd love to hear it. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for being such a great community. You know that I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.